So, hello and welcome to the Daily Space for today, March 4th, 2020. Yeah. I'm your host, Annie Wilson. Most Mondays through Fridays, our team will be here putting science into your brain. And usually Wednesdays are for Rocket Roundup, but today's a bit different. No rockets launched last week. I repeat, no rockets launched last week. I can't even. Anyways, so instead of rocket launches, I'm going to tell you all about the rockets that didn't launch, as well as give you an update on MEV-1. Let's get to it, shall we? Oh my. So, for the first thing that didn't launch was Astra. On the 2nd of March, Astra attempted to launch one of 3 for the DARPA Launch Challenge. This would have been the first orbital launch for Astra, but the count was stopped at T-minus 53 seconds due to unexpected signals being received from the rocket's guidance, navigation, and control system. The launch was then held for the remainder of the 3-hour window while technicians accessed the pad to ensure the rocket could maintain its launch-ready status, and even replaced a suspect ground transmitter, which would have been responsible for activating the flight termination system had the rocket gone off course or malfunctioned in flight. However, they were unable to resolve the issue with the sensor before the launch window closed. Now, normally, we don't talk about rocket launches until after they happen. This launch is an exception because of its association with the DARPA Launch Challenge. Also, because, again, there were no rocket launches last week. So, what's the DARPA Launch Challenge? The DARPA Launch Challenge came into existence because the ability to launch at a moment's notice has long been on the U.S. military's wish list. Specifically, the challenge was for a commercial rocket company to launch 2 rockets with different payloads from different locations into different orbits with very little notice. Here's a statement from DARPA's website that explains the challenge in more detail. Quote, "Today, space launch is a process that begins years in advance, and it relies on a limited number of launch ranges that have complex, expensive, and one-of-a-kind fixed infrastructure. The DARPA Launch Challenge is stressing the time, technology, systems, and processes that currently constrain access to space. The challenge aims to minimize launch infrastructure, improve responsiveness, and take advantage of advances in commercial launch cadence to demonstrate flexible launch capabilities in days rather than years for our nation's defense." For this challenge, Astra was kept in the dark as to its first payload until late January, about 30 days before they were to launch, I think. This was to ensure the company could no longer make major changes to its launcher to customize it for the payloads. Remember, the goal was to have a successful flight that would demonstrate the capability to launch any payload, not a specific payload. Additionally, Astra didn't find out about the intended launch site until 2 weeks prior to the initial launch in order to demonstrate the company's flexibility of deployment. The selected launch site was the Pacific Spaceport Complex located at the Narrow Cape on Kodiak Island, Alaska. Let's face it, if you can launch from there, you can probably launch from anywhere. It's remote, the temperatures in February and March hover around freezing, and there's minimal launch infrastructure. The spaceport literally does not have the capabilities to launch anything bigger than a small lift rocket. Rockets arrive either on barge or by plane, which is the route that Astra decided to go with. Astra's entire launch system fits into a single large shipping container, which can then be flown by aircraft wherever it needs to go. That container first arrived in Alaska on the 18th of February, a day into the scheduled 14-day launch window. Because of a vicious winter storm that lasted more than a week, Astra requested and received an extension to the challenge launch window. Had this launch been successful, DARPA would have awarded the company $2 million US. Astra would have then had 2 weeks to prepare another launch for another set of payloads from a different site. If both launches had been successful, the company would have earned an additional $10 million US. So, yeah, it's kind of wild. So, what now? No one won the challenge. The payloads were taken off the rocket and returned to their owners. While Astra claims they will continue to work towards demonstrating this very quick launch turnaround capability, there is no word on when or if the scheduled payloads will be launched. So, there is no launch video because there was no launch. There's just that. So anyways, on to the next story. So a while ago, we talked about MEV-1. And for the first time ever, 2 satellites in a geosynchronous graveyard orbit have docked with one another. On Tuesday, February 25th, the mission extension vehicle successfully autonomously docked with an aging commercial communications satellite high above the Pacific Ocean. The satellite is IS Intelsat 901, and like many other GEO satellites, it's still capable of performing its intended mission, but is low on the fuel needed for attitude adjustment and station keeping. After its launch back in June of 2001, it served well beyond its planned 13-year lifespan and was raised from its operational orbit to a GEO graveyard orbit late last year. That GEO graveyard orbit is the nearest convenient place to put decommissioned satellites to keep them out of the way of currently operational satellites. Thanks to the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun, the orbit of these satellites becomes inclined and increasingly distant over time, further decreasing the chance of them interfering with spacecraft in lower orbits. So, knowing that fuel was running low, Intelsat signed on with Space Logistics LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Northrop Grumman, to have IS-901 become the first craft ever to test a design where an otherwise operational spacecraft could have its mission extended by docking with MEV-1, which would provide the needed fuel and thruster control to keep IS-901 properly oriented in space. And I have a video for you. And it's a mission overview. I don't know if it's going to talk or not. So we're just going to mute it and talk. I'm just going to talk over it. So the mission profile of the MEV-1 is simple in theory. Launch to space with plenty of fuel and a robust attitude control and navigational system, then meet up with the target satellite in orbit, latch on, and for the next 5 years provide the target satellite with station keeping services it simply cannot provide for itself. But if rocket science has taught us anything, it's that execution is sometimes much more difficult than theory. The MEV-1 launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan last October and spent several months using its low-impulse ion engines to reach its proper orbit. It finally arrived to the neighborhood of IS-901 back in the 5th of February, and after taking several pictures of the target, ground controllers gave the green light. MEV-1 then used its higher-powered, more responsive liquid-fueled jets to approach the aging satellite from spaceward or apogee side of the craft, first parking at an 80-meter distance, then again at 20 meters away. At each pause, ground controllers reviewed data sent back and gave the go for the craft's next phase. Each time the craft received go, it executed its next phase autonomously without help from the ground. Finally approaching to within 5 meters, the MEV-1 extended a long probe into the throat of the apogee engine nozzle of the IS-901 spacecraft. Once inside, several mechanical fingers deployed, grabbing IS-901 and pulling the two craft physically into contact. And I think that's what this video is about to show. And here it is approaching from the apogee side, the space side. Here it is stopping at the near hold to send data back. And boom! Here it is approaching, and it's going to grab it. Turn on the lights so it can see and line up to its target. There is a camera on this. Here it is extending the mechanical fingers. Or the probe, rather, with the mechanical fingers. And captured and docked. Boom. And yes, this is indeed a zombie satellite brought back to life. Literally, the only thing wrong with the satellite was that it had ran out of fuel. This video goes on for another minute, so we'll just continue to watch. And it is going to pull the satellite from its graveyard orbit back into an operational orbit. Once it's done with, I think it's going to be docked for 3 years. Nope, 5 years, excuse me. I'm sorry. But it has the capability to release and repeat this with a different satellite. Yep, and here it goes. At the end of the service, after it's pulled it from graveyard, it will pull it back to graveyard, undock, and proceed to the next client. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And here, remember how I told you it had a camera? Here is a picture from that camera of the docking process, of the satellite and then of the docking process. So as I said, the MEV-1 is now in the process of returning the IS-901 back down into the Clark Belt, where will operate over the Atlantic Ocean at a longitude of 27 degrees west. It should complete this maneuver by the end of this month, performing various operational checks as it goes. Intelsat is reportedly paying $13 million per year for this operation, as compared to the initial construction and launch costs of reportedly over $700 million for a planned life of 13 years. I didn't do the math, but I'm sure 13 times 5 is much, much lower than 700. Once the 5 years are up, MEV-1 will return it to the graveyard orbit and then move on to the next customer to provide the same service. The craft is reportedly able to perform this same 5-year mission for up to 3 separate satellites. The operation went so smoothly that Intelsat has announced that MEV-2 will perform its docking maneuver while the target satellite is still in GEO, not while the satellite is in graveyard, but rather meeting up with this satellite in GEO and just keeping it in GEO. MEV-2 is expected to launch in June of this year from French Guiana, along with Intelsat's new Galaxy 30 spacecraft aboard an Ariane 5. However, despite the apparent success, Northrop Grumman has no plans to build additional MEVs. Instead, they are focusing on developing mission robotic vehicles. Rather than acting like a tugboat for out-of-fuel satellites, these mission robotic vehicles, also known as MRVs, will act more like an in-flight adjustment and refuel service. Using a device called a mission extension pod, the MRVs will be able to autonomously refuel a satellite before undocking and moving on to the next customer. That said, Northrop Grumman has stated there is nothing preventing them from constructing other MEVs if market demand exists. And last but not least, SpaceX's Starship SN1 imploded during testing on February 28th. I'm not entirely... Oh! She's okay. Are you okay? She's okay. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong, and I refuse to speculate, but I do have a video of the implosion for you. It'll play it'll play a couple times. So I know they were testing the cryo system. I know they were testing the cryo system. And it literally imploded. I think this is the slow-mo. Yeah. I'm just gonna stop it there. That video literally just continues to go on. And Boca Chica Gal for NASAspaceflight.com keeps all sorts of, she takes all sorts of video and photo of the Boca Chica site, and they get shared on the web, and this video is pretty easy to find. It really is. A lot of news outlets have used it. So thank you, Mary of NASAspaceflight.com, for sharing this. And this was from Space Padre Isle account on Twitter. And this is the day after Carnage. I know you all like rocket carnage, so I figured I would share this. And yeah, there it is in all your glory, or all of its glory. Okay, so to wrap things up, here's a running tally of a few spaceflight statistics for the year. None of these have changed since last week. There's been one toilet burned up in orbit. We have 245 new satellites in orbit, with 231 of those coming from rocket launches. I keep track of orbital launches by where they launched from, aka their spaceport. Here's that breakdown. We've had 16 total launches. 5 have launched from the US, 3 from China, 2 from French Guiana, 1 from New Zealand, 1 from Russia, 1 from Japan, 1 from Kazakhstan, and 1 from Iran. And your useless space fact from the week comes from Dave himself. Statistically, at the fastest speeds humans have ever traveled, the radiation of their own bodies would give them cancer before they reach the closest star. Yeah, that's all I have for you. Keeper of Maps is asking, why is Iran in red? Let me flip back to that. Iran is red because they did launch a rocket. The launch, it did leave the pad, and it wasn't successful. It was successful in the fact that it took off, but the mission as a whole was not successful. So I haven't checked lately. Various sources call it a partially failed launch. Some places call it a failed launch, but they had a launch attempt. So that's why it's in red, is because it's considered a failed launch. So there you go. All right. So Broken Symmetry says we need a failed launch column. I mean, SpaceX had no intention of launching SN1 to the 2. Yeah, I think the Iran launch did fail at the second stage, Veronica. So anyways, I'm going to take this moment to remind you that this is a production of PSI, Planetary Science Institute, working in collaboration with Youngstown State University here in cloudy Youngstown, Ohio. Today's script was written by mostly by Dave Ballard and edited by myself. Hi, Annie. And this whole thing will be produced by Susie Murph. So I am going to scroll up and look for your questions. Before I do that, I'm going to turn the doggy cam back on because I know some of you are a little concerned about that thud. I can attest that she is perfectly okay. I think she just wiggled a little too hard. See, there she is. I think she literally wiggled a little too hard out of my lap. Oh, JC is saying, hello, Annie. Chat was talking about birds not being real, but I was totally paying attention, unlike rest of the chat. The birds aren't real thing is a meme, and it's also a subreddit on Reddit. You know, subreddit on Reddit. Where else would it be a subreddit? All right. And make it rain! And make it rain! And make it drizzle for Tinkerbell. I will not be needing a doggy 2.0. I think she literally just wiggled a little too hard. So, scroll all the way back up. And of course, the first thing that I see is JC saying, imagine thinking birds are real. Birds are rocket powered. And yeah, that we did stream that launch, and it was a lot of waiting and playing marbles and chatting about random things. It was a beautiful, sight, and like it was pretty to watch. But it was like, is this thing gonna launch? Is this thing gonna launch? Was there a fence to keep bears? Larry asks about the Astra launch. Was there a fence to keep bears from burning themselves when the rocket launches? I did read about the spaceport, mostly out of curiosity, and there is a fence around the entire compound. And when launch activities are going on, they close the fence, they close the gate, and I think they post a guard at the gate. Otherwise, that property, I think it's state-owned. And I think it's a state-owned corporation that runs the facility as well. Otherwise, you can go there to hike. You can hike around the properties, but you can't get into any of the buildings. They don't do tours, but you can hike around the property, which is nice. It's nice. So... after the refuel, do they clean the windshield too? No, they did not clean the windshield on the satellite. IS 901 did not get a windshield clean. And it is, the whole thing that they can do is, the fact that they can just do all of that is just wild. It is really cool. They're not going to do more of it, unfortunately. I mean, they are, but they aren't. But it is really cool. And I appreciate all of the puns and the jokes in chat. So, handshakes in space. Yes, Broken Symmetry. Indeed, handshakes in space. And yes, Keeper, it can, after the 5 years, undock and fuel another satellite. And it can do it for a total of 3 satellites before, I guess, it's out of fuel and will need to sit in the graveyard orbit itself. It's pretty cool. Journey Started asked, how about promoting separate operational functional features and station keeping in the original design? Just update the station keeping portion periodically. It literally ran out of fuel. IS 901 literally ran out of fuel. There's hardware in spacecraft that, because of exposure to cosmic rays and other things, it tends to fail. So we either manage to get things to last really, really, really long, like Voyager, or we get satellites that just, for one reason or another, can't keep up. They can't use, like, they have batteries, they have solar panels, but that they need something physical to help them move. They need to, literally propel, and it had just ran out of fuel. It was think of it as a perfectly good vehicle along the side of the road or in the junkyard. Nothing's wrong with it other than it's out of fuel. That's it. That was all that was wrong. And that's why they're doing this. I don't know why the lifespan was only limited to 13 years, but it's pretty cool that it's been able to work beyond that. And satellites aren't cheap to build and launch, so it does that. And yeah, as Kerbal says, MEV-1 doesn't refuel, but it acts as a tow truck. So it's like getting a tow truck for that out-of-gas car to just tow you around to where you need to go. It seems silly, but if it works, it works. Right? Right. And once it tows it to where, once it's done towing it around, it's going to drop that satellite, and go pick up another and do it again. So, yeah. The MRV will refuel satellites, which I think they're focusing more on the MRV because then they can service more client satellites in a shorter period of time than tie up one craft with one client satellite for 5 years. So, indeed. Doggy dismount. Dog dropper. Did something implode? Yes, something implode. And the dog did fall off my lap. I was not, yeah. 50 Cheerios for dropped floof. She really did wiggle right out of my lap. I'm gonna have to try something. Trillion H2O says, based on that video of SN1 imploding, I am 100% sure something failed. So, and yeah, RefsMat, the SN1 is huge, and it is indeed almost the size of the first stage of the Saturn 1. Larry says that he read that he thinks he read that Elon blamed a bad welder too. We do know that Elon was there inspecting welds. We do know they changed welding processes, but when I put everything together, I couldn't find a very specific, this is what failed. I know it failed during cryo testing, and that's it. So because I don't know for sure, I don't want to continue perpetuating bad information. So sometimes it's just as much as you can do. Need a failed launch column. Yeah. Keeper says, you could do a stacked bar graph of failed versus successful. Well, there have been no countries with failed and successful launches yet. So far it's been either or, but yeah, stacked bar graphs are the next step. If we get like if the US or New Zealand gets a failed rocket launch, then we'll do stacked bar graphs. So I think, and make it rain. And something about food. JC says, how long until we have some cool rocket launches, but without the whole explosion-y part? The next rocket launch is tomorrow, I think. I checked this before we started. You'd think I'd keep this up. It indeed is tomorrow. There is at, let me pull up the UTC time. It's tomorrow, but because it's so late in Eastern time, it's actually, for UTC, it's on March 6th. So UTC, March 6th at 1:33 a.m. Eastern time, that's tomorrow at 8:33 p.m. Pacific time, that's 5:33 p.m. I don't know if I'll be able to cover that. We'll see. I make no promises. Brexit Denier says, Annie, this is not quite a question, but an observation. If they can dock expired satellites, can they deorbit them? The only way I could see deorbiting would be destroying the craft that's also doing the towing. I don't know if it can give it a nudge in the right direction, or if it can attach something to make it deorbit faster. GEO satellites are actually way out far away from Earth, so that's why they go into a graveyard orbit rather than getting deorbited. It's not the same kind of issue we have with low Earth orbit, and, you know, like the Starlinks are going to be in low Earth orbit, I think. But Starlinks are going to be much closer than the huge GEO stuff. So theoretically they could, but I don't see a way to do that safely for the tug craft. And, yeah, and his Keeper of Maps goes on to say it's easier to grab geostationary satellites, but bringing them to a lower orbit to deorbit them would be more challenging because of the fuel requirements. So, yeah. Fenmill makes a statement. They should mandate a fuel reserve for deorbiting LEO satellites. They reach that reserve, they deorbit themselves. I think there's been some kind of agreement made or some treaty or something about LEO satellites and deorbiting time. And honestly, I don't have a good answer about what happens to all these LEO satellites at the end of life. There's so much space stuff, guys. There's so much space stuff. There is that. Oh, JC, I see what you're seeing. Is there theoretically possible to get into space but without that explosion-y part of the process? Not right now. We need the explosion-y part of the process. We need a lot of force to escape gravity. Keeper Maps is like, look at me, time zoning. Did Falcon Eye 1 not go to space okay? Asked Refs Matt. I don't remember. I don't remember. I really don't. Sometimes I report on this stuff and it leaves my brain to make room for other stuff I need to report on. And sometimes it's like space toilets and it just gets stuck there. JC says, oh, come on, Annie, space stuff is not as fun without you telling me what I'm looking at. I mean, yeah. Uncle Bill pops in about fuel and things for low Earth orbits, low Earth orbiting satellites, saying that he thinks it's already mandated. So if the deorbit burn is 1 delta V, is the bye I have stuff to do here burn almost 2? Open cage, that's literally orbital mechanics, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. Will they be able to get that going with tug refueling robots that service LEO satellites? I don't know. I don't know, Astro B. It may be more challenging to get there because it's lower and there's more stuff. Oh! Refsmat says Falcon Eye was the failed launch of the Vega last year, and I did stream it. Oh my. Oh my. Okay. So yeah. I guess Falcon Eye did blow up. That was indeed, yeah. That was indeed the Vega launch that I don't think we still, I still don't think we know what went wrong. Hey, there's a lot of rocket launches in a year, okay? There's a lot of rocket launches. It's hard to keep them track. And there probably is a video on demand because I think it was the first time that something just exploded for me and went terribly wrong. No, there was Berry Sheet. I think Berry Sheet went totally wrong for me on video first. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Uncle Bill. You are my savior when it comes to this. So LEO, things in LEO orbits decay within a few months without regular boosts. So they're constantly being boosted. So yeah, I don't think we really need a tug to pull them down into orbit. I know some satellites have been deployed with like a sail or something to make them deorbit faster, but I'm not sure. It was the launch that the actual track was under the design track. Yes, because something went wrong. I think in the second stage, but I still don't think we know what went wrong. Okay, thank you, Uncle Bill. I will have to try to file this information away from memory. Uncle Bill goes on to say that it is the middle and high orbits where deorbit reserves are now mandated, or a graveyard orbit plan. Falcon Eye 1 failure. Engineers believe super hot gas from burning solid propellant impinged on the structure of the second stage on a European Vega launcher during a failed flight in July. That would do it. That would do it. Solid propellants are awesome because they're stable in storage for a really long time. They're terrible because once you essentially light it, you can't blow it out. It's like a trick candle that doesn't go out in water. You just can't blow it out. So yeah, there was a sail satellite that tried to raise its orbit and keep it there, asked Astra. I really don't know. I don't know. There's a lot. The sail was the light sail, wasn't it? I think that was part of the process, was I think that was part of the process to have it raise and lower its orbit before deorbiting. Uncle Bill explains GEO, for example, requires far too much delta V to deorbit, so those have a graveyard orbit a few hundred miles higher. Yep. Dave did put in the actual numbers, and I, of course, as a fool, deleted them. So, but it was something like 30 or 3,000 some kilometers, and then it was, I think, at least a difference of 200 kilometers. So yeah, and yeah, that's why it would take more fuel to deorbit GEO rather than just pull it to graveyard. So I'm sorry, JC, we don't have a barking interrupted stream counter. I feel like we need to. And yeah, solid rockets pollute too. Part of the fuel component is aluminum. Yeah, I don't have all of my models ready to show you all of the configurations of fuel, but there's that. Thank you, Brexit. Thank you for the actual numbers on the GEO orbit. So, yeah. Arc, I may actually just have to do that. Sometimes I'm quick enough with the mute button, sometimes I'm not. I also worry that it would clip out my voice too much. So, yeah? Are you done? No, they're not done. Zine! Hey, Zine! Problems are mostly with highly elliptical orbits or some higher than LEO and GEO. They can take a lot longer to decay. Yep. Orbits are tricky. I really don't know orbital mechanics. I'm still learning about orbits, and I am still at that point where I know enough to be dangerous, and I really rely heavily on Dave, and Dave unfortunately is not in chat today, so he cannot answer all of your questions. Yeah, Limprimble, they're sending you a sign. They're sending some sign, because Zion says play some KSP. I know you guys really want to watch me play KSP. And I don't know if that'll be a thing. I don't know if that'll be a thing. So, Arc asks, won't a highly elliptical orbit deorbit be easier? Just burn up or just burn retrograde on apogee? I don't know. That's a Dave question. What would happen if you blew up? JC asks, what would happen if you blew up like 10 nukes in a black hole? Probably nothing. I mean, black holes eat all the things. Again, I know enough astronomy to be dangerous. Yeah, open cage. The only highly elliptical orbit that I know of is Ammonia orbit, which I know we've talked about before. And it's highly inclined too. So rather than just being like this, it's more like being like this, like that, or this, like a polar orbit. It's more like this. Astro says, can we play Space Marbles? No. Unfortunately, I have a lot to do. I have other projects to work on. I have email to read. I have letters to write. I have things to proofread. So what would happen if all 10 black holes ate each other? That sounds like a question for Universe Sandbox. If you don't have Universe Sandbox or Universe Sandbox are that it's fun to play with. So as Fenmil says, Fenmil thinks it's a lot of space-time ripples. And yeah, Space Marbles is awesome to kill time, but yeah. So yeah, for those of you that don't know, we will not be streaming all of next week. There will be no podcasts all of next week. I am unsure if I am going to stream this Sunday. There is a major conference the week after next, and we're seeing if we're going to support that through live streaming it to people, because of COVID-19 it may get canceled because the conference is a lot of people in one spot. And yeah, that's not part of the con crud they want spreading this year. So yeah, we don't know if that conference is canceled yet, so we need a week to kind of work on that, and I need a week to get my stuff together. Brexit Denier asks, where is the nearest bark hole? Where is the nearest black hole? I don't know. At the center of our galaxy? I don't know. Yeah. So there's a lot going on, but I do know for sure that we will not be streaming. Veronica Cure is asking, where is the conference? Let's see if I can find it in Discord real quick, because it is something we've been chatting about in Discord. It's at the Woodlands in Texas. Woodlands Waterway Marriott Hotel and Convention Center in Texas. So Houston, thank you. Oh yeah, and Susie's gonna be gone too. Ha ha. Not everybody is canceling everything, but this Lunar and Planetary Science Conference, which is the one I'm talking about, is probably attracts people from all over the world, and yeah, that's just not good. And all these facts about where the closest black hole is. Closest black hole is V616 at 3,300 light years away. So if you could travel at the speed of light, it would still take you a really, 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 really long time to get there. And it is 6.6 solar masses. That means it is 6.6 times the size of our sun, so a little more than 6.5 times the size of our sun. Or the mass of our sun. I shouldn't say size, because space-time continuum. No, JC, you probably can't. I really don't know enough about black holes. So anyways, who should we raid? Who should we raid? Who's live? I don't even know who's live anymore. They've changed literally everything in Twitch. So I can't quite see who's live. So hello, the Kingsguard. We're wrapping up. There were no rocket launches. So Adam's streaming. Yeah. So I'm not getting any suggestions. I'm going to check TKF real quick. We are a member of TKF, that's the Knowledge Foundation. And let's see who's live. Yeah. I don't think Gregonomics is live. When is the next time we'll see you? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It literally depends on when I'm moving, as opposed to when Favorite Human is moving. Favorite Human is moving before. Right now he's moving before I'm moving. But if we get our act together, we might move at the same time, but there's going to be a lot of panic packing. So, I might hate life. So I don't know. Where is the next time we will see you? Well, honestly, it'll be either here, I'll either be at home, or I'll be at Pamela's house. We'll find out together, because I have no idea. None. So with that, panic packing, aka scrape it all into a garbage bag and then shove it into a truck. Yes, that's basically what's happening. I have a feeling that's going to happen. I wanted to avoid that, but that's going to happen. All my Legos are going to be packed neatly, and then everything else is just going to be shoved in. We'll stop watching without doggos, Trekker Kev threatens. Trust me. Trust me, the dogs are coming. The dogs are coming. Alright, so that's all I have for you today. Yes, important things. It's all I have for you today, so thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And, how and why will we see you? Well, how is on your computer screen or on your mobile device, and why is because this is literally my job. But yeah, so Pamela, I think, will be back tomorrow at 1800 hours UTC, and she'll have more spacey news, and you can ask her all the questions about black holes. Until then, this has been Rocket Roundup on the Daily Space. I have been your host, Annie Wilson. Today's script was pretty much written by Dave Bullard and edited by me. Our producers, Susie Murph. Our fearless leaders, Dr. Pamela Gay. And my two noisy co-hosts and Cheerio eaters are Tinker and Puck. We are part of PSI, it's Planetary Science Institute in Tucson, Arizona, working in collaboration for just a little bit longer. Youngstown State University here in Youngstown. Yeah, it's still cloudy outside, Ohio. PSI is a 501 nonprofit. Oh, thank you! Anyways, PSI is a 501c nonprofit, which means your donations are tax deductible where the laws allow. We are brought to you by you. So thank you for all of your support. Really. You guys pay my paycheck, and I freaking appreciate it. Oh my god! More bits! And make it rain! And, Yeah. So wherever you are in the world, as I now fumble with everything, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful insert time of day here. And I will see you eventually, because that's my life now. That's my life now. But yeah. Bye.